So we are welcoming back to the studio once again Jeannie Goodrich, who I think when we talked last time there was an interim in front of your title, but these days that has been dispensed with. The executive director of Summit Pointe. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for being here. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Boy, this has been, I suppose, a tumultuous year, hasn't it? And things are leveling out now, are they?
As I was getting ready to come onto the show today, I kind of reflected back on the past year, and wow, it has been a year.
Yeah.
We have made a lot of changes at Summit Pointe, and as I took over the interim position in January, our focus was to maintain clinical services, focus on the core clinical services, and we've done that. And while we've done that, we also had to take a look at all of the administrative level services and the different processes that we've had to go through, and very publicly in some cases.
Right.
So we've made a lot of changes in the last year.
Yeah.
And a lot more coming up.
Well, and we'll have some time to talk about that. Generally, though, this had to be done, right? I mean, when this is the situation, everything gets looked at top down, right?
Yes, it is. And we used words, to use a buzzword, transparency, right? So we've had to talk a lot about transparency. We've had to talk a lot in our public meetings with the board and really have discussions that perhaps we didn't in the past, but it's very public. And that's what we're really trying to focus on a lot.
So where do we stand now? I mean, are the ripples all padded out here and things have calmed down and you've done what you feel needed to be done?
I think we're heading in the right direction. I think that there's a very public hearings that are happening in Lansing, unfortunately. So that's a cloud over our head until that's done. We've had MDHHS in as an audit team. They've done a 3-year focused audit on Summit Pointe. They came beginning of July and finished their on-site audit middle of December.
Wow.
So, that's hanging over our head. They really did a lot of examination of all of our cost centers and our allowable cost and really took a look at the use of the Medicaid money. So that's hanging over our head. But from that, those are just high-level pieces. Day to day, the board named me permanent CEO in October. In November, we looked at a new organizational chart and have now in place some new positions that help with the senior leadership team. And we have 2 new staff starting in January, Monday actually, that will help build the senior leadership team and help bring some check and balance back into the organization.
Yeah, let's talk about the audit for a second.
Sure.
Is that something that was, I presume, typically scheduled, or did this get ramped up because of everything that's gone on?
Sure. So every year we do an audit. It is generally an outside firm that comes in and audit, and we share that information with MDHHS. Through the investigation, they decided to come and do an additional audit. So this is something over and above our annual audit, which we currently are in the process of looking at for last fiscal year. So it's a dual process.
Well, and probably not too surprising. I mean, I would presume you weren't too surprised. They said, well, let us come and take another look.
No, we knew from the investigation that it was, all in likelihood going to happen. It's just, what exactly they were going to take a peek at.
Yeah. Jeannie Goodrich is here from Summit Pointe. We're back in a minute on WBCK 830. 15 WBCK. Jeannie Goodrich is here, CEO at Summit Pointe. So when do you know about the results of the Health and Human Service audit?
Yeah, so they did an on-site audit. They will now go back and start to compile the results. They have not given me a timeline for when the results will be expected.
Okay.
So, they were with us for almost 6 months. I anticipate probably just as long to prepare the report. And then the process will be they'll give us a preliminary report. We'll have an opportunity to look at the report, provide additional data, talk to them about their findings, and then they'll produce a finalized report.
All right. The results of everything that's gone on, did you ever feel at any point in time that there's been too much scrutiny?
Too much scrutiny. Well, I think from where we were
Yeah.
to now, yes, it feels like too much scrutiny at times. But, at the end of the day, this is taxpayer money.
Yep.
It is Medicaid money, and there should be scrutiny. And so I don't shy away from the scrutiny. We really try to work hard to figure out, okay, what are we really trying to measure? How do we really, show that we are using the taxpayer money in a effective way for mental health care? And, that's what our focus has to be.
One of the things that seems to have developed over the course of the years as it relates to Summit Pointe and your predecessor was there was a very entrepreneurial approach to the way things were being done. And uh, some might make a case that that's unusual in this business, but that there was a tremendous focus on that which perhaps you could do that was innovative and different and profitable at the same time. I've served on nonprofit boards, and you sit there racking your brain trying to figure out, geez, what can we do to create more revenue streams? There seemed to have been some kind of rock star thing going on with that. Is that still a goal you'd like to see achieved?
Yeah, so Kelly and I think we've talked about this previously. Entrepreneurial and government operations, they're not um, far apart.
Mm-hmm.
They can coexist. And we've worked really hard. One of the things I had to do as an interim is to prepare a budget for this fiscal year. Our fiscal year starts October 1st. So I had to really take a look at those services that are core clinical services that are mandated by a community mental health to provide, and then those services that are those innovative entrepreneurial type services that we have provided in the past. And how do we make those, ensure that those are not using Medicaid money or subsidize those in any way? And so this fiscal year, we have a budget. It is razor thin for a margin, but we have put together a budget that allows those programs to continue and to still allow us to focus on the core clinical services and or providing Medicaid services through our community mental health.
Mm-hmm. Talk about that razor thin margin. I mean, something else that was going on in the old days was your predecessor was pretty well paid, like big time well paid. Now it's different, and the margin is thin. This is all part of the change that's gone on.
Yeah, our funding is very different, meaning we have a budget expectation through Southwest Michigan Behavioral Health to provide services to our priority population. So there is money that is assigned to us, and we need to spend that money to provide services for our priority population in Calhoun County. So while we have that, we also have a general fund. And that money is provided through the state, and that is to provide services that are not covered by Medicaid for customers who are indigent.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an ever shrinking pot of money that we have to watch. And some of those pieces kind of all coexist together to make the budget.
So you're comfortable with the way things are now?
I think it's a work in process.
Yeah.
I think we've put together a pretty strong budget, and we are monitoring it very closely and making sure that we are on the right track always.
Have there been, and do there continue to be, times when you're having to reassure folks in the community about the way things are?
Sure, reassure folks in the community, reassure our customers, reassure our staff. Right. So, if you read just the papers and the publicity and
Right.
you listen all in the public, you start to think, is Summit Pointe viable? Is it really going to be here in the long term? And, I've sat with staff who are asking, am I going to have a job next week?
Of course.
And, so we've had to do a lot of assurance. And while we have maintained that the changes are on the administrative side, the clinical services continue to keep moving forward. And in fact, we have a lot of initiatives that we are discussing on a leadership level to really ramp up more services. So, it's a work in process, I guess.
We'll talk more about what the future looks like when we come back in just a minute on WBCK. Jeannie Goodrich here from Summit Pointe, 823 WBCK. Jeannie Goodrich is here, CEO at Summit Pointe. So amidst all of that you've been through in the last year or so, you've had to also say, what are we going to do in the future? What does it look like next year and the year after that and so on? And you've managed to try and make a vision out of this.
Right, so we put together a budget for this fiscal year. This is also going to be the fiscal year in January at our board meeting. We're going to start to talk about strategic planning. And this is something that the board wants to undertake and figure out where we're going to go in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. What is it going to look like? Mm-hmm. And so we're really excited to start that process. I think it hasn't been, the board wants to examine the strategic plan from not just their level and not just senior leadership level, but from the teams and the clinical teams themselves. So it's going to be a very collaborative process, and we're really excited about starting that.
How have you done this in the past? I mean, there are different ways that nonprofits undertake strategic planning. Sometimes they do it, every 5 years, and they hire a consultant and somebody who has no preconceived notions and try and guide you through all the thinking and all that stuff. Is that how Summit Pointe does it?
Yeah, we've done it that way in the past. Yeah. We've had several, I've been there 20 years, so I've seen some very successful strategic plans, some that sit on a shelf.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we want to try and make sure that we err on the side of making one that's going to work this time, and not sit on a shelf. So we're going to look at different models and get everyone comfortable with a good model so that we're not creating something that's for a small slice of our population.
What would you like to see happen? If you're sitting there when everybody's still sleeping in the morning with your first cup of coffee and you're saying, man, if we could do this, that'd be cool. Do you think like that?
I do. I've spent a lot of time in the last few months really learning how other community mental health work. And, I've forged a relationship with the CEO at Kalamazoo County Community Mental Health. And there are some really innovative services and practices that he is doing through that CMH that I've learned a lot from. So I think I have a lot to learn from my colleagues and how to build a really strong community mental health.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you have a dream of something? Boy, I wish we could do that.
I really would like to be able to provide community-based services more in the community. I believe, stigma is a very large and ever-present barrier in mental health care. And so how do we take our services and take them into the community? Because I realize that not everyone's going to come to our brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. So we have to be agile and go to where the need is. So if I had a dream, that would be my dream.
Yeah, even now, the whole issue of mental illness is in a different place than it was before, seemingly a better place, but the stigma's still there, isn't it?
The stigma is still there.
What does that do?
What it does is it doesn't allow people to receive treatment early on. And so you end up for months or years not having treated your mental illness. Mm-hmm. And then you're at a point where it's debilitating. You can't function. And, that it takes a while to get back on track. And that's unfortunate because we have a lot of preventative services that can be provided. And early on is the way to try to prevent the onset of chronic mental health issues.
All because a person who might be trying to sort those issues out says to themselves, I'm going to be looked down upon if I do anything about this.
That's right, right.
Just let that sit for a minute and imagine that. Wow. Yeah. It's incredible. It's a silly barrier. It happens in a lot of arenas, though, not just mental health, too.
That's correct.
Well, let's stay in touch, and anytime you want to come back and talk about what's happening, we're glad to have you.
All right. Thank you very much, Richard.
Jeannie Goodrich, CEO, Summit Pointe. 820.